Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This video is a continuation of our Windows Server Homelab series. So in this video, we will be setting up file services and file sharing in our Active Directory Homelab. And this is the 5th video in the series, so I highly recommend you to watch my previous videos if you don't have any experience setting this up yet, because there are prerequisites to this Homelab before you can get started doing this one. So in this video, we are going to be setting up file sharing on a Windows server. We are also going to be talking about what network sharing is, different types of permissions, and implementing file service resource manager to manage all of our network shares. Then I'm going to show you a hands-on lab that you can do on your own machine to practice all of the skills. So file and folder sharing is just a practice of making all of these resources available for all of the users in your company to make editing, sharing of files, modifying easier in your environment. So just a quick review of the concepts in file sharing. We do have two types of network sharing. We do have the local and network sharing. We also have different types of permission and access control. We have read, write, execute, and full control. And we have two types of permissions. It is important to understand what these are so you can implement it better and apply it better on your environment. We have what we call NTFS and share permissions. And we also have two types of sharing methods. We have network and map, which I will be showing you later when we do our hands-on activity. Okay, so just a quick review on the types of permissions that we mentioned earlier. So we have two. We have the NTFS and the shared permissions. So when you're sharing folders, you can set up these two types of permissions. So I'm just gonna give a quick overview on what the differences of these two permission types are. So on the left side is the permissions for shared, and this one on the right is the NTFS. So if you can look into the two permissions, the main differences that you can see that are quite obvious is that there is more permissions on the NTFS type than shared. There's only 3 for shared, and there's more detailed permissions for NTFS. So the main difference between these two and where it's applied is that the shared permissions are permissions you can set on the folder level only. So the permissions for shared are only applied on the folder level, so it's not applied or set on the subfolders and the files under it, while the NTFS is set for everything that's also under that folder, like subfolders and files. Okay, so let's get started with our hands-on lab for this video. So first we are going to set up our file services, and before you can set up this, make sure that you have a Windows Server already installed on your VM or physical machine. It's up to you. You already have Active Directory domain services, you have GPMC installed, and you have a client, a Windows client. It can be Windows 11 or 10, Pro or Enterprise, VM or physical machine. It's up to you, but you just make sure that you have all of this before moving on to setting up file services. Okay, so our very first activity is to set up a file sharing. So these are the following tasks that we have to do. We have to configure file sharing by creating shared folders first. So we have something to share, and we will set it up with appropriate permissions. And the next is to set NTFS and share permissions to allow the main users access to it. So we are going to see the differences between the NTFS and share permission once we are setting up file sharing for our folder that we created. Okay, to start this, go to your Windows Server and log in. So once you're in Windows Server, alright, so the next step would be to open up File Explorer, because we are going to create a folder that we are going to share later on. I'm going to click on local disk because that's where I can create a new folder. So just create it normally, like just an ordinary folder for now. I'm going to call this shared. You can name this whatever you want. So once you created a folder, next is to right click on it and go to properties. So as you can see, there's different tabs. We are going to set up shared permissions first, and after that we're going to do the NTFS permissions. So just to simplify this, like shared is basically like a general permissions access, so it applies on the folder level. And if you want more detailed access for like particular folders or subfolders or files, you can do an NTFS permissions. Okay, so I am going to click on the sharing tab and then click on advanced sharing, and then I'm going to click on share this folder because I wanted to share over the network. And if you click on the permissions at the bottom, this is the permissions for shared, and this is where we can configure it. For now, I'm just going to give permissions to all the domain users for our environment. So this is accessible by everyone that's under our domain here. So what I'm going to do is click on add and then just type in domain and check names. And as you can see, there's different choices in here. You can also add different stuff in here, domain admins, but for now, domain users is what we want. That's for everyone that is in the network. So I'm just gonna leave this in read only because that's what I want for now. So everyone that's a domain user can open up this folder that's called shared. So click on apply and okay. So that is how you can set up the shared permission. So apply on this one too and okay. Now let's move on to the NTFS permission. So let's click on the security tab, and this is where you can see more detailed permissions here, and you can see more groups or username. You can also do a lot of things, detailed things in here. You can give permissions to group, you can give permission to just one person. For example, your company president is asking you to give him access to a certain file or a folder, or just for like a time frame. You can also do that by adding in just that particular person in here and giving him a set of permissions he needs. So this is where you can do a lot more configuration. So we are gonna keep it simple for now, just for this example. So I've added the users in here. These are the domain users. So you can add more permissions in here, for example, like allow full control for example, but for now we are gonna leave it like this. I just wanted to show you how to set this up, so I'm just gonna click on close for now, and now we have a shared folder. Okay, so now we are gonna test if we can get to the shared folder from the client machines, because for example a user wants to access something on the network. So we are gonna try to set up client machine and test to see if the folder that we have created is accessible now. So these are the tasks that we're gonna do. We should log into our client machine now with the domain user account that you have created from previous activities, and try to map the network drives to access the shared folders. Okay, so earlier we were in the Windows server. Now let's go to the Windows client that you have. So mine is a VM, and I'm just gonna click on that. Okay, so next step is to map the network drives and see if we can get into it. So open File Explorer next, and right click on this PC and select map network drive in here. So I'm just gonna select letter S just to represent shared. Usually that's what we do at work. We pick the drive letter that corresponds to the name, so it matches, and it'll be easy to remember. So S for shared, and in here just type in the correct path for this. So this is gonna be your server name and the name of the folder. So if you don't know the name of your server or the host name, just go to your server, and then you can do this the easier way by using the command line. Type in cmd to open the command prompt, and if you type hostname, you can get your hostname, or this is gonna be the server name. Okay, so just type in // your server name / your shared folder name, and uncheck to reconnect at sign in. You don't wanna sign in again once we try to connect with this. So just make sure that there's no typo, everything is correct, and click on finish. And then you'd see right away that you're connected to the shared folder. And if you expand this PC, you're gonna see the shared folder in here now. So let's reopen the File Explorer to see the shared folder. So you're gonna see the shared in here. Okay, so that's how you can test that you can get into the shared folder from your server. And that is how you can map a network drive for one of your client machines in the workplace. But there is a problem with this method. So this is one way or one method on how you can access a file shared. We mentioned earlier that there's two sharing methods, that's mapped and network. So this is the first method, which is mapping a network drive. So the problem with this is that if we reboot a client machine, for example, I'm just going to restart this and show you. Okay, after rebooting, let's open File Explorer again and see under this PC, and as you can see, the shared network that we have accessed and mapped earlier is gone. That's because what we did earlier is not persistent, or it won't stay and keep the settings once your computer reboots. So that is an issue, because if the users wanted to access that all the time to do their job, that's gonna be a pain to keep doing that every time the computer reboot. It's okay if they only need it temporarily, or if you as an admin need it temporarily, but for a daily use, it should be automated. And that's where the other method comes in, which is the network sharing. So this is a more automated and a better way to set up network sharing for all of your users. This is more persistent, and this is a more efficient way in how you can manage also how users can access different shared resources. So what we're going to do for this task is to configure a GPO to automatically map network drives for users. So you should be able to create GPOs now and understand what GPOs are before you proceed to this activity. If you don't know how to do that yet, I really highly suggest to watch my previous videos on GPO. Okay, to get started with activity number 3, let's go to our Windows server, okay, and open the group policy manager, GPMC, the console. So I've already set up my Active Directory in here, so just make sure that you also have Active Directory and you have different OU for the computer and users. So what I'm gonna do is to right click on group policy objects in here to create a new GPO that we will be naming map or map drives. Just be very specific on this, but you can name it however you want. Okay, so let's expand this and right click on the map drives we just created and click on edit. So just a review on what we have learned from the previous video. So what do you think this configuration will be? Should it be under computer or user configuration? So because the drives is based on what the user needs, this should be under user configuration. So is it under policies or preferences? Because we are not really enforcing this, and the users can also add more map drives if they want to later on. This is just going to be the standard for them. We should be using preferences in here. So if we click on preferences, expand with those settings, you can see there's a drive maps here, very straightforward. So let's right click on it and click on new and select map drives. So this is where you're gonna type in the server name and the shared folder name. So this is gonna be the path. This is the same as how you mapped the network folder earlier. Okay, make sure that you have typed it in correctly with double backslash in here and the name of your folder. And let's just label this as shared, or how you want the folder to show up later. So this is where you can select the drive letter. So I'm just gonna choose letter S just so it can match the folder name in here, and just keep every other setting in here and click on apply and okay. So as you can see in here, this is where your path should be. Okay, so this is our GPO. So let's close on this one, and we created the GPO for this. Now we have to link the GPO for it to apply to our users. Okay, so the next thing is I'm just gonna drag and drop it to the users OU, because it's the users who are gonna be using this GPO. So just want to link this and click on OK. And if I expand the users, I'm gonna see drive mapping in here now. So that should be applied to my user OU now. Okay, so let's test if that works, if our GPO works now. Let's go to our client machine. And of course, if you wanna apply this right away, go to the command prompt and type in gp update and /force and wait for it to finish. Okay, once that's done, let's just reboot the computer and see if our changes and GPO applied. Okay, so let's open File Explorer and see if our GPO applied, and we can see the shared folder after reboot. So there it is. So we have the shared folder in here. We're able to access it too. So that will stay there even if the computer reboots, because it's now on a GPO. So whenever the user signs in, it's automatically gonna be mapped to their account. So that's an easier and more efficient way to map network drives without having to adding it manually for every user. Okay, so let's move on to our next activity, which is to implement quotas and file screening using File Server Resource Manager. So we are going to be using this tool, FSRM, to configure a quota template and file screen template to manage our file storage, like our shared drive earlier. So before we start doing our hands-on lab, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what FSRM is to those who aren't familiar with it. So this is part of the Microsoft admin suite of tools that helps you manage and classify the data that's stored in your file servers and shared folders. So if you're working in IT and you're admins, of course, it's more efficient if we can set up limits to what our shared folders can store, so that the users will have a limit on what they can save on the shared folders. Because if we are managing our own servers, of course, our storage is not unlimited. Of course, on our servers, usually we have a max on our storage. For example, like 60 terabyte for the whole company. And over the years, if we don't manage our shared folders efficiently, of course, those folders will get full. And if they get full, we will no longer be able to save any more files. So it's really good practice to be able to manage them and get notified once it's almost full, so that we can tell people to clean up their files, because it's also expensive to buy more hardware for more storage. Okay, so let's get started with the hands-on lab and go to your Windows server once again. So if you are following my videos, we haven't installed the tools yet for this, specifically the file resource tool. So I'm just going to show you in Windows admin tools that it's not here yet, because I wanted to show you how to install it. So if you go to server manager, or just search it up, and we are going to add it the same way we added Active Directory tools earlier. So go to manage and add roles and features, and click on next and select role-based, feature-based installation. Just keep going until you see the choices in here. So in here, there's already file and storage services checked in here, but we have to select what we wanted to install. So if you expand that and expand this with the ISC/SI services, you should select the File Server Resource Manager, because that's the tool that we want. And just add features in here. Click on next and next until you get to the install page, and just wait for it to finish installing. Okay, so once you see that the installation succeeded, just click on close. And let's check if it's here now. So you can open the admin tools and you should see File Server Resource Manager here. And let's just open that. So as you can see in here, this is where we are gonna configure our settings. So these are the different settings that you can configure. So let's get started with the quota management first. This is where you will set up the maximum amount of data your folder limit is gonna be. So for example, the shared folder that we created earlier, we can set this up for like 10 gig of data maximum. So it's really good practice and best practice to set up quotas for each folder, so that the users can't just keep filling up the folders, because our storage once again is not unlimited. We can reach the maximum, and it's really expensive to buy more hardware storage for this if this keeps happening every year. So it's really better to manage that. And this is also where we can set up a threshold for notification. For example, our shared folder has reached 80% of its maximum. That's where IT and admins will get an email, for example, that it's at 80%. So we can let the users know to clean up their files before we even reach the limit. Okay, so to set up the quota management in here, let's just expand this. So you can see two different setup here, the quotas and quota templates. So the quotas is for a more specific and detailed setting, and if you want more customization for it. Okay, so if you right click on this and create quota, this is where you can create a customized quota for your shared folder. So the quota path is where you're gonna select the shared folder where you want to apply this quota. So we are gonna do this on our shared. So let's just find it. It's under this C drive and just click on that and okay. So as you can see in here, that's where we want to put Quota, and then we can click on define custom Quota properties because we want a more customized setting for this. So if you click on this, we can change the limit in here on how much you want the maximum to be, and you can also put a description in here just to make it easy for IT and admin. And of course, best practice to put a hard quota in here. Users should not exceed limit in here so it won't affect other folders, folder storage as well. And then this is where we can add the notification threshold we were talking about earlier. So you can click on add, and this is the percentage of the threshold. So typically at work we just do 80. It's safer than that. Then this is where you can click to send an email to the distro list, for example, for IT admins. So that is how you can set up Quota for your shared folders. So next is to set up the file screening management. So let's just expand this. And same with Quota, there's different setting under this. So file screen management is basically just controlling what file types you can allow on this shared folder. So the examples of file types are documents, text files, video files, audio files, pictures. So sometimes we want to restrict different file types like videos, audios, and pictures on certain folders because those really get heavy and that can fill up our shared folders easily because they have bigger size compared to documents. So as much as possible, we don't want users to be saving videos, for example, and just restrict those kind of multimedia files. So this is how we can do it through file screening management. So for example, let's click on the default one. So this is if you want this particular setting just to block the audio and video files, you can select this. But if you want to block more file types other than audio and video files, you can do a custom properties in here. So let's go back to this and check the drop down. So this is where you can select different file types. But if you want to restrict more, for example, our shared, we will only allow text and document file types in here. So let's go to custom properties because we can select more than just the audio and video files. So I'm gonna click on audio video files in here, compressed files, executable files, we're not allowing that, image files to web page files, so we're just restricting it to text files. For example, this is okay, just click on OK and create. And you can also save the template name so you would know which setting it goes to. So I'm just gonna put the name of the folder in here and click on OK. So as you can see, we have created a file screen in here under shared. So that is how you create different configurations for file screen and Quota management. Okay, so that would be it for today's video. I hope that you learned something from file sharing and management. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comment section down below, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.